No. It's a single 3.5-inch floppy disk.
No, they have two. But don't worry, they'll be on fire.
No, single.
You mean the save symbol?
Yeah.
The fate of the world in the 90s was always on a single 3.5-inch floppy.
Did you not? I backed up my saves that way.
Leo, are you sure it wasn't a 5-inch floppy?
Oh, thanks for noticing. But no. Anyway. Cut that part out, but it's hilarious.
I don't know if I want to cut that out. I kind of want to leave it.
Just a reminder, this is a spoiler-heavy podcast. Different series that require a spoiler warning will be in the description. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Gaming Theater Podcast. Today's episode is going to be a special episode about a brief history on the legacy of X-Men, the animated series. So this is not X-Men 97, this is the X-Men that came out in the 90s, which...
X-Men 94.
92.
Did it start in 92?
Yeah, it starts in 92.
X-Men running through the 90s.
X-Men in the 90s.
X-Men early 90s, go.
Yeah.
It's iconic.
That's such an iconic thing.
Yeah.
Which that
have
theme
to
song
know
you will
X-Men
not
to know
hear on
that.
the
I
show
mean-
on the basis of copyright.
Gong!
That gong that sells it.
I guess it's a bell, maybe, but you
Hey
get
man,
it.
there's nothing wrong with
Is
an
it?
acapella cover.
I think it's a bell.
It's probably a bell. But,
Boy. Alright, that being said, I've got a few guests with me who's going to help us out and talk about X-Men from this era. And with that, once again, my name is Leo. I am your host. Yeah. Yeah, start over. All right. So we're going to get started with this, and I'm going to introduce several of our guests with us. Now, once again, my name is Leo. I am also known as the Geek Scorpio, and I will be your host this evening on this episode. And over to my right is going to be DandDaine.
hi, my name is DandDaine. You've probably heard my voice if you've heard us on GTP before, but if not, welcome. We love having you. I'm a TTRPG enthusiast, a charity guy. I stream on Twitch and do charity stuff there, so come check us out.
All right. And over to their right is going to be Gummin.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another season of GTP. I know that a lot of you who have been here for a while are familiar with me. I am Ben. I go by L Penguin on here. I am a real-life gym leader that inspires others through fandoms and fitness, and so much more.
All right.
I think at some point I can add onto my resume, I lift people in more than one way for a living.
You lift them up by their spirits and themselves.
And by their bodies. I will pick you up.
And the bodies.
All right. And over to their right is going to be... Go, Brandon.
Hey, I'm Brandon, also known as Tomato Man. I edit stuff, and I make noises and voices, and I'm very tired and need more caffeine.
I hear you on that one. All right. With that being said, before we get started, let's take a quick trip over to the magical merch booth.
I was muted! Ah!
Late sounds.
I forgot about it in the year. Ah.
All right.
What a world.
Okay. Here we are on the Magical Merch booth. Now, in this case, for today's Magical Merch booth, I just wanted to end a big shout out to all of our fans and guests that have been with us in the past, and just, once again, really thank our fans for sticking with us and watching our stuff and listening to our show. We are here for another year. We're going to keep on trucking as much as we can for you. And yeah, that's about it. I just wanted to thank everybody for sticking with us for the times that we've had on this podcast.
Yeah, honestly, we wouldn't be able to do this without you. To second Leo's sentiment, absolutely. Everyone here at GTP is very thankful. So thank you for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed what you're listening to. If you have Oh my god, my brain. If you have a suggestion for something you'd like to see covered, let us know in the comments.
Oh yeah, we're always here listening to those comments and checking that out, or even stop up in our Patreon, which some of our Patreon subscribers have actually mentioned in and given us some extra episodes to take a look into. All right, but with that being said, let's go ahead and go back to the show. So here we are on today's episode, and we're going to go over a brief history of the legacy of X-Men, the animated series. Now, if you're wondering why, some time ago, we had a little joke that said 1 like, and we would be able to make an episode about going over X-Men, the animated series. Similar to, because we did that in our Justice League episode that you can see in the past from Justice League, the animated series. We got a like, so it's happening. This is going down. Now, that being said, X-Men, the animated series is kind of interesting because it occupies, similarly, a big change in how we do animation and animated stories for television, almost as much as Batman, the animated series, which is saying a lot because these two end up being kind of juggernauts in that realm. Yeah, I said juggernaut. That's not just a pun.
I'm glad you caught that, because if you didn't, I was going to scream it.
That's what we call foreshadowing. Stay tuned.
So,
all that and more up next.
Okay, so to go over that, let me kind of backtrack a little bit, because to explain X-Men in the 90s, we have to explain X-Men in the past. So, what some comic fans know, comic historians will know, but a lot of comic fans don't know, X-Men wasn't originally a big series. So you had the original X-Men comics, and then what happens is at the end of the X-Men, with Stan Lee's run, and back in the 60s, and at some point they just stopped making them. But people really, fans of Marvel Comics, like the big three back then was Spider-Man, obviously, the Avengers, not necessarily them as individuals like Iron Man, Captain America, and the Hulk was super big in the late 60s, early 70s.
Which, I mean, the Avengers was kind of a happy accident, because that was just a filler, and then it turned out to be a humongous hit.
And Stan Lee has created several other comics that are out there as well that we know of. But the thing is that these were the big three of Marvel. X-Men was kind of pushed down a bit, and it actually stopped being produced for a while. There was a lot of fans who wanted it back on, but there was just not enough of a sales now that to keep that going. Now we move fast forward into the 70s. At some point, they decide that they're getting some new comics, new blood going into the Marvel space. Specifically at that time, because fun fact, Warner Brothers took over DC, and they merged together for that one. So working at Warner Brothers working at DC felt like a corporate, very structured job for artists and writers of comics. So if you wanted to be able to play with more emotion and be able to do with more of your storylines and have more experimental art, you could go with Marvel, which didn't pay as much, but at the same time, you got a lot more freedom for it, and a lot of people would do that. And so we had some great comic writers and artists that pop up in this era because of that in the 70s. So what now, the key thing with X-Men is they changed it out to bringing X-Men as one of the big things that was, we're going to go ahead, we're going to restart the X-Men, and we're going to do that as an international-based group, not a regular group. And this is important because the first iteration of this, which will later be known as the Uncanny X-Men, has Wolverine, who's from Canada. It has Storm, who is from Africa, and they have various other people from I think it's not Sunspot. I'm trying to remember, but he wears a dragon mask, and he's from Japan. He's not in it for very long, but he's in the series, and they have a couple of other ones sorted. So because of this, they decided to move forward for it. You bump into a particular writer. His name is Chris Claremont, who ends up taking over for the X-Men series. And as being the lead writer, he is the one that writes between the 70s for X-Men all the way up until the 90s. Now, he takes over because this was work that Stan Lee had. Stan Lee in the 70s and all the way through the 80s will start working for Marvel in different positions. But one of his big things that he wanted to do was to make it so that way he could push to get Marvel comics and characters from their into animation, into live action, into other mediums that are not just comics for that one. Which is why we have shows like The Hulk, which does amazing. And things like that one Doctor Strange movie that was in there in the 70s that not a lot of people remember.
Oh my god, it's so bad. It's not at all good. I know this is about X-Men, but go watch the 70s Doctor Strange. It is one of the films of all time.
Dan, you look like it was like a fever dream for you.
Honestly, so there's some things about it that definitely are fever dream adjacent. Absolutely. Maybe either fever dream or sleep paralysis demon. I haven't quite decided which.
Oh, jeez. I mean, at least to get options. That's always nice.
Now, moving on for that one. So what happens with this is Stanley finally gets the push to do this, and we get to 1989, and they do a pilot for a new cartoon show for X-Men, their X-Men animated series, and this thing is a stinker. It is awful, and I watched it. It is awful. So here's the thing: it's not awful in the same vein as what would normally be an animated series if it was 1981, but it's 1989, and we've had other better animated series before them, and then they just messed it up so bad.
It's 1989, and we should know better.
Oh yeah, at this point you've got So here's the thing: when they came out with the pilot, they had they had the characters from the Uncanny X-Men that were there at the time. So this is important to note because not all characters that made it that worked better in the comics worked well in the animated series. They also had, let's call them, choice decisions. For one thing, Wolverine is from Canada, so his accent should be Australian. Also, Wolverine's mutant powers is claws. Just the claws. He doesn't heal, he just has claws. That's all you got. They kind of that's all they got there. Then they have Kitty Pryde, who is the stereotypical annoying sidekick character that's supposed to be there as the surrogate audience member. I'm here to help. I'm here to help. Literally, you've been on the team for 2 minutes. You're not allowed to go fight Magneto on day one.
Not with that attitude.
No, and then she
like,
ends up saving the day.
Like this. We like your gusto, kid, but maybe some training first.
But no, I've got chutzpah. Let's go do this. Look, now, guys, if you're fans of Kitty Pryde, don't worry. Kitty Pryde gets better. In all the iterations after this, Kitty Pryde gets way better.
I mean, yeah, hard not to.
Hard not to when the bars hit that low.
Yeah, because this is Pride of the X-Men, right?
This is Pride of the X-Men, the only episode of this lost pilot. Because now, if you were in the arcades, though, X-Men the arcade game, which has 6 players, is amazing, and they took the characters from that episode and put it on there and took a bad gamble. No, we'll do this for this cool video game, and people will be watching that show, right? Right?
Did you say it was a gambit?
No, he shows up later.
He shows up later.
We'll get there eventually, don't worry.
We'll get there eventually. So the thing is that they had some really cheesy things. One of the things is that they had Stanley be the narrator for the story. Another thing is that they used it's very direct. Oh, folks, we're going to have to go through this. The X-Men better watch it because there's Magneto that they have to fight. There is no subtext to it. Magneto literally comes to the school and just immediately starts fighting the school.
That's what he does.
He just wants to fight skulls.
Also, he has Juggernaut on his team as well, who is not a mutant, but here he is. And if you didn't know that Juggernaut is Charles Xavier's brother, don't worry about it. He will tell you this repeatedly. And so there is and also apparently Toad looks weird, like his costume in general. Now, granted, it's because they based everything off the comic, and some things work in a comic that they don't work on this. Like, Toad's outfit looks like a reject Renaissance fair actor.
That's true. That's very true.
So, I rig all this up. They make all these weird mistakes and such, but the production companies are like, well, we have the license and we can do X-Men. We just need to do it right or better, because this pilot is not what it seems. So, pulling a classic trick that we've seen in science fiction before, I Love Lucy. For those who don't know, Star Trek, when its first pilot came out, was terrible, just terrible. However, somebody, in this case, Lucille Ball, saw great potential into that show and just had him redo the pilot, redo the whole series, redo everything, and make it work. If you're ever watching the original pilot for Star Trek, only one character stays, and that is Spock, the guy who nailed all of his lines. He just fit right. Everyone else is not great at all. So I bring this up because we're going to have to sidetrack to a completely different series to explain how we have this series. There's a guy, I think his name is Hyman Saban.
Hyman Saban. Yeah,
Hyman
same
Saban.
Guy who originally gave us Power Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I didn't know his first name. I just knew Saban.
Yeah. So he runs the Saban production company. He always had this dream of making a low-budget television show that would appeal to children. Man had a choice of a dream. And his dream is what will later become Power Rangers, because he wants to take footage from a Super Sentai show and edit it so that way he can make cheap footage to work with another show. That's a choice. But when he does this, he pitches that show to a bunch of people, and then he pitches it to Fox. And Fox is like, we're really not going to do anything with this. And he notices that they're still working on X-Men. He goes, hey, what if I help you guys work on this show and make this thing work? And they're like, look, don't know how the whole deal works out, but near as I can, from my research and understanding, it goes something like this. Listen, buddy, if you, Jaime Saban, help us make X-Men and make it kicks off like gangbusters for some reason, fine, we will help you make your Power Ranger show.
Oh my god.
Spoiler alert.
And then he did. So they made. So he worked with the production company, and the production company groups have to work with Marvel, and there was a whole bunch of ends that were getting tied around. At the same time, people in animation circles found out about BTAS, about Batman the Animated Series being coming out, and what some of that episodes and shows are going to look like. Because it's kind of like knowing a guy who knows a guy, especially in the 90s. If you were in animation, you knew someone who knew the inner circles that everybody works with, and they kind of work with as teams for that one. Also, at this time, the guys who are making BTAS worked on Tiny Toon Adventures, who means that they worked with Steven Spielberg, who is one of the biggest directors of all time, especially at this time. So they started knowing each other. So the reason why they did this is because they're like, okay, we need to have this show, and we cannot do the same things like we did back in the 80s. We need this to be a smarter show, a better show for that one, and we need to take this. So this is where we bump into where they made a lot of choice changes, and they kind of work out for it. And one of the biggest things, which Stan Lee was not happy of, is they kicked Stan Lee out.
Boy, that's a choice.
It's a choice indeed.
So Stan Lee does have a lot of rights to a lot of his own a lot of the things that he worked on and created. So he has the rights to X-Men, so they needed Stan Lee's approval to make X-Men. But one of the things Stan Lee wanted to be was the narrator for the show. And he kept convincing them, he was like, you know what you could use here? A narrator. You know what we need for this scene? Probably, one of them narrators I've heard so much about. Oh, you need a narrator? I know a guy. It's me. I'm the guy. So apparently one of the first things they did was like try to convince him to do that, and eventually he goes, all right, I guess. And so he laments to not being the narrator for the show, so that way they can actually just make the show. That's just the weirdest thing on that one. So not only did they make one of the best songs out there, like the theme music actually had to go back and forth like 3 or 4 times. They're like, make it cooler. Apparently one of the secrets I found to that is add a couple more hi-hats. This is what is going to get it cool. Am I going to complain? No. I've heard the finished product. It's amazing.
I mean, the kids love hi-hats.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing is that they have one of the things that they wanted to break down is their opening cast, and that kind of makes or breaks their series, which is kind of a big choice that they wanted to do. So quickly, I'm going to go around there for their original cast for it and kind of explain part of it. So the first one is there is at least 4 characters that I know that are forced to be in the show as a mandate from Marvel. They're like, if you want X-Men, you have to have these 4 characters. Professor Xavier, kind of makes sense. It's his school. He's the dude, right? Cyclops, because Cyclops is one of the first X-Men and one of the one of the big guys for X-Men. Sometimes he's referred to as the Captain America of mutants. Like, he is the Boy Scout. He's the dire loyalist. And then you have Jean Grey, because apparently there's a lot with Jean Grey that's going to happen with that. And they're like, their stories are all intertwined and such. And then Wolverine, because he is Wolverine. Because Wolverine's popular, and that is about it that I could find on that.
I do find it a little bit funny, too, that, depending on when you're reading the comics, right? Around this time, you had the blue team and the gold team, right? The gold team being Angel or Archangel eventually, Iceman, Storm, Bishop, Colossus, and Jean Grey, I believe. And then the blue team was Cyclops, Beast, Rogue, Gambit, Wolverine, and Psylocke.
Storm, I think, is in the blue team.
I think she's gold.
No, she's gold.
She was kind of like the leader of Gold Team, if memory serves.
She's the leader of one of those. Like, my memory's a little hazy for this time. Guys,
yeah.
If you're wondering how popular X-Men was, for the longest time, X-Men #1, which is the reboot of the X-Men series after the Uncanny X-Men, at one point was the most popular, most sold comic book of all time.
I think Jubilee might have been on the blue team too, now that I'm thinking about it. Sorry. So, yeah, you're absolutely right, Leo. And like, I find it very interesting because these teams were developed in the 90s. So you would think, if I were making a cartoon series and then also a comic book series, that I would want them to be a bit more mirrored in like who's on the team, right? So like Cyclops and Jean Grey and Colossus and Archangel aren't on or are in the animated series, but aren't on the same team as sorry, I said Cyclops, I meant Storm. The gold team members and the blue team members both inhabit inside the animated series, but are in different teams and different comic book runs at this time. And I think that's very weird, a little bit.
It would be odd. Well, they did this on purpose, though. Because the pilot, remember, it failed. And the pilot is directly, they took every character that was on the team originally, which is the Uncanny X-Men at the time, and put it onto the show. And that did not work. And it didn't work because, and this is sort of a writing standpoint, it doesn't work. Doing a one-to-one transfer doesn't always work. Dazzler's like a good explanation for that one. Dazzler keeps coming back up in the comics, like left and right. Shows up for a few episodes and then it goes away. Dazzler as a character makes sound into sonic blasts and such. It worked great. They introduced Dazzler though in the 70s because as a play off the disco era. They'd never gotten Dazzler to work right after that though, and in the 80s it was supposed to be some kind of like new wave pop star type thing, and it was all right. It made sense in the comics, but if you've been following the comics lately, every time Dazzler shows up, she's in her disco outfit, and doesn't. And cool, I've got Dazzler. We put her in the new show. They're sort of forward thinking. They don't know what they want, what they can do with them, and rather than just keep them out of obligation because it's in the comics, they don't. They're only working on what would work as a dynamic for the storyline, not as a dynamic for because this character shows up. And also, we're getting into the 90s where the X-Men become almost a revolving door of characters.
That's very true. I just find it very interesting, like, the founding members, or at least those that we think of the founding members, the first class, if you will, includes Iceman, and he's in the Gold Team, but he's not in the animated series initially.
No, he's got one episode, I think, and that's about it.
So I find that very interesting, whereas, like, newer characters like Wolverine or like Beast, who are popular and are great characters, but they show up after the fact in the comic books, and they are included from the jump.
Mm-hmm. Now, ironically, Beast is not in the pilot in the pilot episode that failed because at the time, Beast isn't in the X-Men. Beast is in the Avengers.
Really, I didn't know he was in the Avengers.
Wouldn't some of this probably also be a matter of wanting to protect the brand to an extent, like characters that are consistently performing well in the comics, and after that pilot having failed, maybe not wanting to utilize them and risk damaging the comic run? Because that is the thing they do now.
So that's the thing they do now. They did not do it back then, especially in the 90s. They were very... the 90s was a very experimental and...
Wild West.
And I wouldn't say go as far as the Wild West. Everything was extreme. But it was a thing for it. So they saw the comics and the animated series in two separate entities. So, for example, Batman the Animated Series, they only reference the comics as to bring up characters that they want, not actually. I think there's only like 4 or 5 episodes that are actually from comic books entirely.
Also, I need to recant a statement real quick. I said Beast came in later. He was a founding X-Men. I don't know what I was smoking, but he was there from the beginning. It was him and Cyclops, Jean Grey, Iceman, and Angel. So
yep, those are the OGs.
So my bad, Beast enjoyers. That's on me.
I am
Beast Boys, maybe?
No, we don't talk about it.
No. Although
I'll
explain something funny with that one too. So here's the thing. These are the characters that are mandated by Marvel. Wolverine was going to be there because Wolverine's super popular and cool. Therefore, go out with the best. Keep the popular and cool character that we've got.
And just to recap, Professor X, Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Wolverine, right?
Those are the ones that are mandated by Marvel. Outside of that, they were allowed to use any of the X-Men characters. So these are the ones that they ended up picking and choosing for various reasons whatsoever. They picked Storm as one of their the members for that. Storm's very popular. Storm has its own identity for that one, and Storm is also can at any point in time for a writer just be the powerhouse. Storm is powerful, but also Storm has a lot more depth to her than what the other comics would use. How do I want to say? Storm just has a lot more depth to her. There's a lot more going on with Storm than anything else for it.
Isn't she also classified as an Omega level mutant?
Yes.
Yeah. Storm is, for all intents and purposes, outside of Xavier, probably the most powerful mutant that they have in this run of the X-Men. Okay?
Meaning the animated series.
In the animated series. Not like the X-Men in total.
Okay.
Just the animated series. Okay. So the next thing that's on there is going to be...
Jean Grey, though.
Jean Grey is powerful.
Jean Grey is a whole nother level of stuff, but she's also got her own issues.
Doesn't that have to be awakened? Like, it's not innately available?
But she is an Omega level mutant. Just
Yeah,
to be clear.
Just to be clear,
The Phoenix, very, very Power Rangers, at least in the 90s animated series, the Phoenix Force, which is we'll get to in a minute, I know, takes on the entirety of the X-Men team and wins. So that includes Storm, by the way.
Just putting it out there.
Just gotta say it.
Now with that, with one of the rosters they went back with Beast, who was one of the OGs, and they brought Beast in there for it. And Beast kind of fulfills the Donatello role, the your tech guy, your smart guy for your show.
He does not do machines.
He does not do machines, but
that's a key difference.
Yeah, because he does like biology, chemistry, pretty much all the other ones.
Forge does machines.
Oh, Forge definitely does machines.
Who's also in this animated series.
He shows up. But Beast kind of epitomizes being the smart guy role for it. Now, granted, that's because Beast as a character was always highly intellectual, as opposed to his Beast-like looks and mannerisms for him.
I think it's a really interesting juxtaposition, right? Yeah. Between the Beast on the outside versus the man on the inside. It's kind of similar to what they wanted to do with Hulk, but I don't feel like Hulk really achieves that as well as Beast does.
Not really. Hulk comes off of more like a Jekyll and Hyde sort of situation where it's problematic. Whereas the Beast is, I look like a beast, but I'm actually very wise. I'm actually... He's the Beast that we would want from The Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also, one of the funnest things with Beast is that he will just randomly quote different pieces of literature on that. Like, he's quoted Dostoevsky, he's quoted Shakespeare, he's quoted several other famous writers. They're in like the pilot episode, they have the deal with like a particular problem with a bunch of lasers, but all the lasers are on the ground. So he's like, I'll just he quotes some poem that's just this minor poem. He goes, "Yep, a minor poet for a minor obstacle," and then jumps on the ceiling and just walks away. Now, with that, we also have on that list Gambit and Rogue. Gambit and Rogue was an interesting choice. So Rogue, if you don't know from the comics, was originally a villain. That's how she started out. She was a villain, and then ended up joining up with the X-Men later. So they didn't go with that storyline, which I can understand why. But she has like a hidden past that they explore with later on that. Things that she did before she was tied in with the X-Men. So you couldn't really... and Gambit also has a very, very rugged past for that one. What they did do and explore with, which I thought was great, was their relationship to each other. Because you could see almost from the get-go that they had feelings for each other. But they didn't really pursue it too much. But that's mostly because if Rogue touches you, you just, get zapped. Go into
you get shriveled up.
But out of all the characters that they could choose to go with, if you had the entire gambit of X-Men characters, why not go with Gambit? Why not have these guys? And since they're so newish to the comics, relatively speaking, they had a lot that they could work with. One of the things I think with that is they actually aged up Rogue from the comic, or from a comic incarnation.
Yeah, this wasn't your granddad's X-Men. This was a hot new X-Men with new extreme people who wore trench coats and drove jeeps and stuff
and spoke Cajun.
I mean, not just Gambit, but yes, him as well, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I do find it very interesting that in the 90s, right, there is sort of this reconceptualization of the X-Men, and it happens a little bit before the 90s to be real, but. Beast, as an example, goes from this big, sort of ape-like man who's a normal human, a normal mutant, relatively speaking, to this blue monstrosity, right? You see that transition. Cyclops' look. He loses the chrome dome helmet, cowl thing, and he lets his hair out, and he's got a slick, cool new visor. Right, there's definitely like really interesting character development in terms of the costuming for these characters. this is where you start to get some of their more iconic looks that we now associate with them today. This is from this. They're losing a lot of the old, like,
Campy?
Yes, campy's a good word. I was going to relate it back to, like, the Batman live action series, right? I love the Batman live action, but it's very much like, holy, knit one, pearl two, Batman. We're in a knitting needle factory, right? Like, it's very hokey, very, very campy. And then comics in general were kind of that way in general. But now this is sort of more like it's not the extreme X-Men yet. We'll maybe get to that in a later episode.
Maybe. That was a fun time.
Yeah, it was a time for sure.
It was a time.
What if everything had lasers? And was extreme. But you do start to see these characters sort of develop, and they stop being these sort of like, even though Cyclops is sort of this paragon of truth and justice and very Captain America-like in a lot of ways, it also showcases him as being somewhat of a hothead, right? He and Wolverine get into arguments in the 90s animated. They kind of have a tete-a-tete back and forth where like they need to rely on each other, but they also hate each other. They do not get along for a lot of reasons, mostly Jean Grey, but a lot of reasons. And I think that's very interesting to see that transformation take place in the comics and then be adapted into the live action, or not the live action, into the animated.
No, true. There is now the next character I want to make sure that there's on the team, which is Morph. Now, Morph is not. How do I want to put this? Morph is actually based off another X-Men character that existed called Changeling, but they also couldn't use the word Changeling in in the animated series because of a couple of things on it. One, that's also Beast Boy's actual moniker is Changeling, and two, the X-Men have a character named Changeling. But more importantly, they knew that that Morph is not going to make it past the first 2 episodes.
This one's for you, Morph.
But yeah, so that's they plotted that out, which to justify they were like, no, we are taking things a lot more serious than we are on this. So Morph doesn't do much in the first season or in the first couple of episodes, but Morph will come back into his own. With that, the next thing that the last dude that we have on the team is Jubilee. Jubilee is basically they still wanted a young character, somebody who's like could be a teenager's age and such for it, and they stuck with the thing with the comics where most mutants don't get their powers until they've hit puberty at least. That's just the thing. In rare cases, somebody will have that. Like Nightcrawler is an exception to the rule on that. And with this, they wanted someone that's basically the surrogate for the audience. We know as much as what Jubilee knows going into the X-Men. Now, with that, because they wanted someone like Kitty Pryde, but they don't want Kitty Pryde. Ironically, one of the other mandates was Marvel was to never use Kitty Pryde in this series at all. We want to stay as far away from that pilot mess as possible.
No.
We don't talk about Kitty.
I do find it very funny that, like, all right, we need a young up and coming hero for the kids to latch onto. Someone who's hip, who's going to wear a yellow raincoat and sunglasses at night. But can't be Kitty Pryde. Okay, so not Kitty Pryde. What was that? What was that lady we had? Dazzler? Yeah, what if we just like basically took her powers and Kitty Pryde and we just made a new person out of that? Like, Dazzler and Jubilee have different power sets, but not really. It's pretty close.
They both have
light-based powers that are designed to blind and do damage, you know?
It's in the ballpark.
It's similar.
It's on there. So, like, with that, that's their opening roster. So any new characters that are coming in there are really only going to be there for just a couple of episodes on that. Colossus is only there for, 4 or 5 episodes in general. Nightcrawler
Ileana, my sister. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I just remember quotes as characters from that show.
Mm-hmm.
True.
And then you also have, Nightcrawler, who comes in out of left field and then leaves and then comes in again every so often and then leaves.
That storyline...
That's kind of how his power works.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
That's kind of how his power works, though. Like,
Yep,
well,
got me there.
Dan, what were you saying about him?
I don't know. That was so good. Yeah. No further questions.
No further questions. So this is their starting lineup for it. So with this, and real quick, I'm going to go through a general thing about how their seasons worked out because it's a little different for it. So season 1 is really just establishing the X-Men. The X-Men aren't a live force. We don't know much about them, except they're there to deal with. Except they get involved with the Mutant Registration Act, which is the Mutant Registration Act, which shows up in comics all the time, and it's always over to their head. The big thing about it is that if you have powers, you register yourself, so that way people in the government know who has powers and who doesn't have powers. Right now, they're held as a private company who is asking people to do that, and that's what gets Jubilee's adopted parents to give. They gave that information up, and then that's what starts the X-Men from showing up into the fray for it. They deal with the problems that come up. They want to get rid of to destroy all the back data, so like any of these guys is private information, because it's also linked to the Sentinel program. Big giant robots, which are tough enough to deal with almost every mutant on Earth if they have to deal with those fights. And the thing is that the Sentinels just will tear things down just to get to their target for it. And the Sentinels are constantly being manufactured and made. So that's when a big problem for these guys. So they go off and they deal with it. They're taking on they deal with the mutant the group, the company that's actually has all the data, and just. It's the 90s. You could easily destroy all the data if you knew where it was all. This is old school. They're all in filing cabinets.
No. It's a single 3.5-inch floppy disk.
No, they have 2. But don't worry, they'll be on fire.
No, single.
You mean the save symbol?
Yeah.
The fate of the world in the 90s was always on a single 3.5-inch floppy.
Did you not? I backed up my saves that way.
Leo, are you sure it wasn't a 5-inch floppy?
Oh, thanks for noticing. But no. Anyway. Cut that part out, but it's hilarious.
I don't know if I want to cut that out. I kind of want to leave it.
Anyway, so with that, but this attack on them goes into a disaster. Morph is gone. He gets unalived at this point. And also Beast gets captured and sent to jail and is on trial. But Beast has is basically not there for most of the first season with the X-Men, but it's mostly because he wants to be on trial and he wants to go through the legal matters for that. And as we progress, Magneto starts showing up, and Magneto starts wanting to instigate a war between humans and mutants. Because in his mind, by the way, they make sure to let everybody know that Magneto is from another island, not a World War II survivor. Mostly so that way he doesn't have to be like 80 years old when this whole thing is going on. He's got white hair, but he is also ripped, like has never skipped a single leg day in his life. For someone who floats around, he's got an awful lot of muscles. But yeah, so like so he's always at odds with the X-Men have to be there to protect us, the regular people, from other mutants like Magneto who are going to abuse their powers and use that to their advantage. It's not until towards meanwhile, there's also all this back and forth. Sometimes Sabretooth shows up, who is an old enemy of Wolverine. And Wolverine's like, cool. Oh no, all these cops and things are taking down Sabretooth. Wolverine, shouldn't we stop them? Nah, I'm good. That's paraphrasing, but that is what he does once. He's like, nah, just let him have it.
Also very petty.
He's also very petty. There is a cool line that they have on their one, because at the same time they have to deal with Magneto as well. They're like, okay, and it's one of the lines I always remember from the show. Wolverine looks at Charles Xavier, who's like, okay, you need to go out and stop Magneto. Cool. how come when it's your enemy we have to go fight him, but when it's mine we have to try to save him? Just gonna put that out there. And then he leaves. Mic drop.
A lot of pithy one-liners for sure.
But this is a lot of stuff that's happening in the first 3 to 4 episodes. Like, this is one of the few... Normally when you do animated series like that, especially for children, it's very much a straight line. In this one, there's... Yes, you have to deal with Magneto. But also, Sabretooth is still here, and we're trying to rehabilitate him. Also, Beast is trying to find his day in court. And also, Jubilee is having some issues trying to fit in with the rest of the X-Men because she doesn't know her place. And then also, you know, these kind of spawn off of each other. Like, there's a point, I think, in the before the end of the first season, not all their storylines are resolved, and there's something like 20 of them kicking out. And they do that by design. So, like, you can... they have subplots and sub-stories that are going on there. And most animated series didn't have that. Even Batman didn't have very any sub-stories going on. It was mostly we're dealing with the criminal of the day. And Batman's been praised so much, but X-Men took it into a different line. The other big thing with X-Men when it came out was it is non-episodic. It is what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, it is episodic, but it's
serialized.
Yes, it's serialized.
It is serialized. So what that means is that they, if you missed an episode, and back in the day when I was a kid, I might have missed an episode, you're going to have to stick around and hope it comes back in reruns. Because if you missed an episode, that's it. We're moving on. And that was one of their things, and they were told not to because it's a kids show, and they're like, kids might not be there, and they need to catch up with the show. No. We're gonna let that go through. After the end of the first season, they actually end up having to deal with the Sentinel factory and destroy that factory, so they can't make any new Sentinels. And they also deal with, I think, Master Mold, who is trying to take care. He kidnaps the senator that was completely against mutants and was running off of mutants, right? Running off of I Hate Mutants campaign until he is the one that gets kidnapped. And then when he gets kidnapped, and Master Mold kidnaps him because he's pretty certain that guy is an idiot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut his brain open and put a robot brain in there, and then I'll have him run for president. That makes sense in my head.
Which is interestingly kind of adapted a little bit in the first X-Men movie. It's a little bit different, right? Where obviously they're not trying to put a robot brain, but they are trying to remove a senator by turning him into a mutant.
They're trying to control him in some manner.
A similar vein, which I find interesting.
Yeah. The thing with that is, like, he's like, well, you can't do this. You can't do this against humans. He's like, and Master Mold's like, all mutants are an evolutionary process against humans. Therefore, all humans are mutants. Therefore, I can fight everybody. Like, that's Master Mold's logic. They're like, and at this point, they realize, I backed the wrong horse on this one. But don't worry, the X-Men save the day with Magneto's help, and they blow up the Blackbird. They'll get a new one. What they don't tell you is Charles Xavier's super rich. But, like, those things are expensive. Not certain if you're aware, the SR-71 is an expensive plane.
Those cost money. How dare you?
Not if you run a school, apparently.
So yeah, that is kind of the rough estimate of the first season. And then the second season, they're like, cool, let's do... What else can we do? I don't know. Let's have Jean Grey and Cyclops get married. I don't know. Let's have Mr. Sinister bring back from the dead Morph. You know, because that keeps happening in comics. I don't know.
Yep.
So they also, like... There was this also weird storyline where you have, partway through an episode, Cable just shows up. Does Cable things, and then Cable leaves.
He is a time traveler, to be fair.
Yeah. You don't. If you never read the comics, but you were watching the show, you're like, who is this guy? Well, that's Cable. And what's he gonna do? Leave?
Insert meme.
Who? Don't worry. Cable will come back later, and it'll make more sense.
Season 2 also had 2 of the best episodes, in my opinion, dealing with the Savage Land.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think is very interesting, because so Magneto has been ruling over the Savage Land, and he's got, like... Oh, I don't remember... They had a super dumb name, this group of villains. It was like the Bad Batch. It's not the Bad Batch, but it's
not
like
the Brotherhood of Evil, is it?
It's not the Brotherhood of Evil or the Brotherhood of Mutants. It's like... It's like the Nasty Guys or the Gross Gang or something. Like there's a really like hold on, let me see if I can find it real quick.
What did he ask himself? How can I make them sound like nobody likes them?
Legitimately.
Yeah.
The Nasty Boys.
The Nasty Boys.
The Nasty Boys.
That's how you guarantee they don't get a date to prom.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They Mr. Sinister found the area and mutates. He formed several of them into his Nasty Boys, which is Gorgeous George, Ruckus, Hairbag, Slab, Vertigo, and used to be Morph. Mm-hmm. Morph used to be a part of the Nasty Boys.
Morph used to be a nasty boy.
He used to be a Nasty Boy. He's not anymore.
Well, can be whoever you want to be.
But the Nasty Boys are the ones who kidnap Cyclops and Jean Grey at their wedding.
Yeah.
And bring them to the Savage Land, which is how we get there. But I don't know, something about that two-parter with both with Mr. Sinister and with just the X-Men at large in this sort of prehistoric dinosaur area. I don't remember if Khazar is in this.
Yes, Khazar is in there because he teams up with Wolverine at some point to get to the Nasty Boys.
You've basically got like He-Man mixed with Tarzan. It's incredible.
Oh god.
It's just very, like, weird. Even as a child, I was like, I don't know what's happening, but I'm here for it.
Yeah, it was like this weird thing. Like, Professor Xavier and Magneto meet up in Antarctica to sort some stuff out. And they're like, did you call me here? No. Did you call me here? Oh, no, this is a trap. And then they fall into the Savage Land. And apparently the Professor Xavier's like, man, I can't believe we're in the Savage. Like he knows about this, just doesn't tell anybody.
Well, because Magneto has been there before, right? Yeah. Like as well, so they're both familiar with it. Weirdly,
But whilst in the Savage Land, something is wonky because they don't use their powers, and apparently Professor Xavier can now walk for some reason. But
his powers are gone. That means he can walk, apparently.
Yeah, that's how that works.
No, never.
My favorite part about that, though, it was as a kid, it was weird to see because you got clips of what was happening at the Savage Land at the end of each episode. Yeah. So you know that they're moving here, and then there's still the rest of the plot going on, and everyone is like, I don't know where Professor Xavier is.
Meanwhile, Professor Xavier and Magneto.
And this is where they introduce different things, like a nice ski day in Germany, and then they bump into Nightcrawler. Or they bump into, like, Mystique at some point somewhere. I forget if this is when Wolverine goes back to Japan in this, where he deals with Silver Samurai.
Not during the Savage Land arc. Maybe during Season 2?
I think it's Season 3. I want to say it's Season 3 for it, not Season 2. Because Season 2 is the Savage Land arc.
That's only 2 episodes, to be fair. to be really, really real and super fair. It's only 2 episodes.
So the Savage Land as an arc, those clips start showing up throughout the entire season, but Savage Land, once everyone shows up, is only 2 episodes.
Oh, jeez. Well, I mean, they spend most of the season giving you, like, mini clips the entire time, just Costco samples, and it's like, alright, cool. Here's the main dish, 2 episodes, that's it. We gave you all we had. You had your story.
Stop stacking on these Costco samples. We gotta you gotta eventually buy the real thing. Get that whole 10 pounds of ham. Oh man.
So it's in the Lotus and the Steel, which season number 13 of 17. So it was the 13th episode of its season. I don't know what season it was for the Silver Samurai.
I'll go find out about that. Meanwhile, But yeah, so like, and keep in mind, a lot of the storylines that are on there, especially for the Savage Land, are ripped directly from the comics themselves. Like, these are comics that they've managed to recontextualize to fit into this animated episode. I think this is the one in that season, or season 3, where they start. I know season 3, it's got a lot of different backstory stuff for things. Like, finding out that Gambit used to be part of a street gang called the Thieves. Like, he actually is a high-grade professional thief. And also a mutant. He's like, I do 2 things. Why not?
I do crime and I save the world.
I do 2 things. You get a lot of different... So, like, that's all in Season 2 for now. And in Season 3 is, I think, the Phoenix Saga, or is that 4?
3 is Phoenix Saga. Season 4 has the Silver Samurai bit you talked about earlier.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so, like, Season 2 is dedicated to Savage Land and opening up a bunch of storylines for it. Season 3 is where they actually are like, no, we're going to do this Phoenix Saga. And from my understanding from it, they capture everything from the Phoenix Saga. They just kind of truncated it, parts and pieces that didn't need to be there for the Phoenix Saga. And, like, you get to see Cyclops going on edge each time because, yeah, there's a giant phoenix in my wife right now. I've got problems. And
then Wolverine's all like, she should be my wife, bub.
Strokes photograph.
That's where that meme is from. No, that meme's from Season 2.
Yes, it is.
Also, Wolverine sometimes just does not deal with his emotions well. Who knew?
Yeah, crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's a 200-year-old Canadian for you.
Well, to be fair, he doesn't know he's 200 years old. He knows he's old. That is
well,
about
I mean,
as
on that
far
same
as
note, then, does he know he's Canadian?
He does. He does. That
He
took a
knows
while.
that much.
Not at first, though. Like, Wolverine, they start exploring his backstory for a lot of different things, and there's a whole lot of holes in his head because of this.
I remember in one rendition of the comics, at least, there's speculation that he's actually Sun Tzu.
I've heard, yeah. That rumor.
Like, they get crazy with him.
Mm-hmm. You're like, how old is Wolverine? Why not? He could be Sun Tzu. He's not. That's not how that works.
No, because come on, look at him. He's clearly Canadian. Or some sort of Australian. I don't know yet.
But, so, they do play with these kind of, like, tropes that the Morlocks is the big thing, which is a set of mutants who are named after the H.G. Wells story, The Time Machine, where they have to deal with Morlocks. The Morlocks are mutants that are too deformed to be able to be, or at least they perceive themselves to be too deformed to be able to be on the surface. Leech literally looks like a big leech.
And then there's Morrow, who's so deformed and so terribly ugly that she throws bones from her hands and arms and elbows.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Also,
how disgusting, am I right? Crazy.
Like Calypso, you have an eye patch, I guess.
I mean, she does have bone spikes that come out of her back, so like it
no,
is
that's
a little bit
bone.
off-putting.
That's Marrow. Calypso's
No,
that's
she has bone spurs.
I was talking about Marrow, Leo, before you talked about Calypso. Not everything's about Calypso.
You don't know that.
I do know that. I've seen X-Men, the animated series. But no, I just find it funny that, like, in some incarnations, right, Leech is a great example. They are definitely harder to blend in. They don't look as human as some of their other contemporaries. Mm-hmm. But then you have Morrow, who does have, like, bones coming out of her appendages and, like, can throw bone daggers, which is super cool. But for all intents and purposes, outside of, like, a couple of bone daggers in her back, looks like a normal woman.
Yeah.
More
I
or
think
less.
we missed the boat on this one.
What do you mean?
But yeah, and then Storm is technically the leader of the Morlocks at some point because she wins the fight and never goes back. But like she puts Calypso in charge, so she never has to go back, and so we don't have to deal with that storyline for a while.
True.
Well, she's deified, so isn't she like a god to her tribe?
To her tribe in Africa, yes, except she's afraid of the Shadow King, who is another mutant who happens to exist only in an astral plane. So the only person that can actually deal with him is a psychic, which happened to be Charles Xavier.
Also, are we talking about Calypso or Callisto?
Stop.
Oh my god.
Because I think Callisto's the
Leader of the
Morlock.
Morlocks?
Yeah, with the eye patch.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's Callisto.
I think you're right. My point being to that is, does not look too bad.
No, like has an eye patch. That's like the defining characteristic. Is wears a sick like jean vest
Mm-hmm.
and has an eye patch. I love the Morlocks. Honestly, I think they're really cool because it does show like. Do they live in the sewers? Do I remember that right?
They live in the sewers in New York.
Take that, Futurama. But I
Wait.
do find it.
They're hold on. They live in the sewers in New York, so they're alligators.
No, they're turtles.
Oh right. No, wait. What about rats?
Turtles and rats. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Although you're in New York, so all rats are pretty big.
true. But I do find it funny because like you have the X-Men who by and large look, I mean, outside of a couple of notable exceptions, right? Beast being one of them, Archangel being one of them. But like most of the X-Men look, at least at this time in the animated series, look pretty typically human.
Yeah.
And then you have the Morlocks, who are sort of these ostracized group of people who are even more ostracized than mutants are above ground because they can't blend in with human society. And it does bring up, I think, this really interesting juxtaposition of like, oh, you think your life is so bad? Well, somebody always has it a little bit worse, right? Or a lot bit worse in the case of some of these people. So I think that they're a very, really interesting foil to the X-Men because it's like they're all mutants, but like not every mutant has the same, I guess, sort of problems as others.
Yeah, it was a big thing with Angel. Angel, before he becomes Archangel, which is a whole thing with Apocalypse. Like, that's a whole thing.
And the
We'll get to that in
Horsemen.
a second.
Yeah.
You know, so with that, which is also a major storyline in the comics as well, which is Apocalypse and getting his 4 horsemen. But what is it? So with that, Angel is in the show, is listed as one of the OGs. Like basically all the OG X-Men except for so Angel and Iceman are just not in the X-Men group. They both just left. Iceman left because he falls in love with Lorna and then leaves, just bails. Okay. And what's funny is that storyline is kind of interesting because Lorna joins another X-Men type group in I think X-Force, where Iceman is really pissed at her because she basically left him and just bailed so that way he could join up this group because they're at least doing something again with their mutant powers and working alongside with the X-Men. They're just X-Men adjacent, I guess, because there's other X groups going around there. You have Angel. The big thing with him is that he's basically just hides his big giant wings and hopes nobody notices that he can pass as a regular person. But it gets harder and harder because his wingspan is like 12 feet?
Huge.
He's huge.
Worse when he's blue and purple and has metal wings.
Maybe nobody will notice the
I
change.
think it would have to be at least a 12-foot wingspan.
I think he actually has something like almost 12 feet of a wingspan for it. Either way, it's hard to hide 12-foot large wings, and he comes back to which ends up becoming a weirdly reoccurring thing. People go to the X-Men looking for a cure or a way to stop being a mutant. And Professor Xavier always has to remind him that, no, we're here to help you hone your skills so that way you can choose to use it for whatever needs that you need to, but also this is a part of you. You can't change that.
Mm-hmm.
And this will come up for an episode in a completely different series later. And I'll get to that once we get past the ending of the X-Men. So, but yeah, Angel is, for all intents and purposes, without the wings, just looks like a really handsome big guy. But, he doesn't have the same problems as other people. Like Rogue, super hot, super attractive. But if Rogue touches you, you go down like a sack of potatoes. If you're lucky. They actually have an episode to explain why Rogue can fly and has super strength. And I love this as a comic nerd, or as a comic history buff. She goes after what they call Binary, which is the other name of Miss Marvel, because they can't use the name Miss Marvel because Miss Marvel is officially an Avenger, and they are not allowed to talk about any other characters in the X-Men anime series that's not already an X-Men. They make one exception for a Wolverine storyline when he's when he's during World War II, because they only have, as far as everybody else is concerned, one superhero, and that's Cap.
You might be slightly off on that, Leo. I remember an episode with Spider-Man.
That comes up in the Spider-Man series. Oh, technically, I get it. If you blink and you miss it, you'll see Spider-Man shooting his webbing in a scene in New York City.
Was Spider-Man... So did Spider-Man do the X-Men crossover then? Am I remembering that?
The X-Men's the Spider-Man's in the crossover episodes in Spider-Man.
Okay,
Yeah,
After the X-Men series has ended at that point.
I remember
That's one
that
thing I'm very
incorrectly.
distinctly remembering is his whole thing was he's mutating more aggressively suddenly.
That's
so
right.
he's seeking out help specifically to control the mutation. And then he sprouts like more arms.
And
like
it's in space
man
for
arms.
some reason.
No.
The episode I'm thinking of.
That'll come in another Spider-Man episode much later.
With
All
Lady
right.
Shiva. Interesting.
So I guess we should go. When the series ends, because we're already on the subject, once the series ends, Spider-Man the anime series is also going on at the same time, and they decide to, for funsies and with permission, let's actually have a crossover. And so they do this crossover for this, for Spider-Man to take because Spider-Man is mutating into a giant hybrid mutant spider thingy.
Man Spider.
Yeah, Man Spider. You're not off with that one. Still better than Spider-Man's.
I just
That's
remember
Spider-Man's super
Batman
easy.
and Man-Bat.
Yeah, so like he needs to find an expert in mutation, so he goes to the biggest expert in that, which is Xavier, and Xavier's like, no, I hope mutants try to figure out your powers. Whatever you've got going on is not the same as what we've got going on. And they're like, and so Spider-Man's super bummed out because he's came here for help and nobody would help him. Except for Beast, who lets him know about a guy who, I think his name is Robert Land. I think that's the guy's name. But he's an expert of mutations, and the reason why Beast tells him about it is because Beast wasn't blue originally. So it's a part of his backstory that they don't explain in the first anime series, but they do explain here, which is Beast tried to actually cure himself of his mutation, but it backfired and sped up and increased his mutation. That's why he's big, blue, and furry. He used to just be kind of a burly ape-looking like guy. But he didn't have the hair or anything for it, and so it made him stronger, faster, but also enhanced his mutation even more so. But he was working with Robert Landon, and Robert Landon is trying to create something chemical to help to try to force people's mutations for it. Who, with help from his assistant, his assistant is also secretly a mutant, who is trying to develop this thing to cure mutants of their mutations if they want to. Side note, it doesn't work. It backfires pretty badly. He ends up being half mutated in Two-Face for himself for the rest of the Spider-Man series. And he just keeps coming back, and they're like, cool, you can always go hang out with the X-Men. He doesn't. It doesn't get very far with that. But the point is that they opened up a crossover series for that if they ever wanted to. Now, with that, what is it? We're on season 3. Season 4 is sort of where they tended to end the series, so they wanted to do something kind of big and bold. I think it's season 3 they actually do Days of Future Past with Bishop, where all the because they send Bishop back in time because he has to stop an assassination attempt that's going to ruin it for everybody. The assassin happens to be, but when he goes through time travel the first time, he doesn't remember who the assassin is. Later, he remembers that towards the end of the first episode of that the assassin's Gambit. But Gambit has no idea why he would ever assassinate anybody. It turns out it's not Gambit, it's Mystique, disguised as Gambit, who is going to pull the trigger. And so they start trying to piece this together. But Bishop wants to sort of take it to this extreme, because it's the 90s, taking everything to the extreme, and ends up getting sent back to his future. And then they're like, Forge is there, and he sees it as a skeleton of Wolverine. He goes, you know what? That's the nice thing about time travel. Once we figure this out, we might just do it all over again. And then other episodes with Cable. And then at some point, there's a disease that's getting spread around that is actually an artificial disease being pumped into mutants to make it look like mutants have this disease. Now, Bishop wants to go back in time to stop that to prevent the disease from spreading anywhere. Meanwhile, Cable's son is gone because of time travel shenanigans. So if Cable wants to save his son, he has to go back in time and stop Bishop from stopping that virus. It was kind of messy, and he found a weird workaround to keep both futures happening at the same time. It gets messy, because what the solution was, infect Wolverine, because Wolverine can heal from anything, and then use Wolverine's blood to make antibodies, which statistically doesn't work, but it did this time. So he has kind of a crappy future, but still not as bad as it was the first time, but not as good as the second time. But then Cable doesn't get everything that he wants.
He's not allowed to be happy.
There's time travel shenanigans, and this is important because after doing the Phoenix Saga and such, they're because Jean Grey is gone at this point. After season 3, Jean Grey it's taken out, and then they do the Dark Phoenix Saga, and they find a workaround to bring Jean Grey back, because it's the X-Men. They have a revolving door of people who get unalived in that series. In the comics, it's much worse. So I guess we should get to the season 4, which is the big thing is that season 4 was opened up for a ton of different backstories for different characters and such. But they ended the series with that section of the series with a set of episodes called Beyond Good and Evil, and it's essentially Apocalypse pulling out his end game because he realizes that he can figure out how to, because he gets himself a time machine and finds out that he can totally rewrite history. He just needs a psychic. Actually, he needs a bunch of psychics, and so it's a race between everybody to. And then from the X-Men to find and hunt down and basically protect all the other psychics in the world to make sure that Apocalypse doesn't have that. Meanwhile, Bishop's lost in time on this time stream, and he knows he has to go exactly over there because, well, it's glowing, and I got no other ideas, and I'm stuck in the time stream. Which he gets kicked into this nexus of time because Cable goes back in time and knocks him out of place. And then Cable is trying to figure out a way to stop Apocalypse permanently by going back in time and dealing with this. It's a bunch of time travel-y shenanigans. The point being is everything works out at the end because Bishop is exactly where he needs to be to stop Apocalypse from coming back, which is one of his cool powers and such. It's a mess, but it's a super cool ending. It's hard to explain on the podcast, but if you have a chance, watch the series. It is a great series. And then, much like a series that worked out really well, they want an extra season after the series was supposed to end. Cough Supernatural, cough Justice League. I think Teen Titans also had something like that going on there.
Cough Batman Beyond.
Oh, yeah. No, Batman Beyond's a little different. Batman Beyond kind of... They did the Justice League episode, and then they had to start making Justice League because that was the most popular episode of Batman Beyond. And so that's why Batman Beyond doesn't have a good ending for itself, because they moved on.
Well, and they do a flash-forward finale.
And that's at the end of Justice League.
Is that one at the end? Well, I don't know. It didn't work for me. I didn't like it. That's my point. I didn't like it.
But yeah, so they had to do another season, and Saban is back in the game, and he's like, cool, we'll do another season. Oh crud! I'm working on Power Rangers and a couple of other things, and as Saban is known to do, how do I do this with a lower budget? And he figures out the way, which is why season 5's animation looks way different than everyone else's.
Cut corners.
Yo. But yeah, they do a bunch of episodes. Like, I can't actually remember much of season 5 because, unfortunately, the first 4 seasons they ripped them straight from the comics, and they had some of their best storylines from there. Season 5 they have a couple more original stories for themselves, but not much of that handles pretty well, except for the ending to the series, which is Henry Geiger comes by and attempts an assassination with an Xavier, and Xavier has to, in order to survive, Xavier has to be has to live with the Shi'ar, which is a bunch of aliens, and that's a whole thing on its own. With that happening on there, Xavier's now big thing is that he can't return to Earth because he has to live with the Shi'ar. So he leaves everything for the X-Men in charge of Cyclops in hopes everything works out and that they have enough training to be able to keep going with the messages that Xavier was taught them, which is why the last episode's called Graduation Day. And then after that, we move on to X-Men 97, because that's when the last episode of that series is. Done. Those are all those 5 seasons. So, if you're wondering what the takeaway of this series is that they did a lot of things so differently and radically. One of the big things is that they took not just inspiration, but actually took complete storylines from the comics and made it, for the most part, work for a children's cartoon. Not every character from the comics can make it over there. It's going to be a while before Deadpool shows up in the X-Men series. Deadpool doesn't exactly work as a PG-13 situation.
No, I mean...
It works out eventually, sort of.
There's a finesse that can be done, but not successfully until, 2017 or something like that.
Something like that.
Something like that.
I think it was Spectacular Spider-Man. There was a weird crossover with Deadpool.
Yes, there was. I was just thinking of that one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, he's equally annoying, but just surprisingly clean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no potty mouth, but is a snarky little turd nugget, so...
So the other thing that they did was serialized storylines, which is new for cartoons at this time. Basically, without the serialized storylines, there's a lot of cartoons that don't work that we have now that was pioneered back then for X-Men the Animated Series. You have such a big love for it, which is why X-Men the Animated Series got renewed to be X-Men 97. And then you also have episodes dedicated to opening up their backstories, which works out really well because you have 8 different main characters coming by. It's an ensemble piece, is X-Men. Spider-Man is you follow the days and lives of Spider-Man. X-Men, you could go with any of these guys. And sometimes random things just happen. An episode will start with Wolverine fighting Sabretooth again. Who knows what that's all about? Come season 5, hey, we figured out what that's all about. So, with that, that's kind of my takeaway with this. X-Men the Animated Series, as its history and legacy are kind of, they are the stepping stones to great animation series that we have now. If we didn't have serialized storytelling like we did then, Avatar, The Last Airbender, Star versus the Evil, and so many other Jackie Chan Adventures, and so many other series that are non-serialized, wouldn't work as well if they didn't have that. And they have solid endings for that. They also they open up understanding the motivations of all of their villains too. You understand Magneto thinks that a war is inevitable, so he keeps pushing it because that's the way he thinks he can solve that. Charles Xavier, though, believes that there's a much more peaceful route that they can go with. They just have to get everybody on board for this. You also have Juggernaut, who just comes in and he's going to wreck places, but Juggernaut's there to mostly he just wants to take down Xavier and fight him. But there's episodes dedicated to, like, Wolverine's backstory, which is all over the place, if you want that.
Which one?
You pick a pick. There's even episodes of Jubilee going off on her own, thinking that she's the big hero, and eventually coming by... there's an episode with Omega Red, which is a villain that is covered in... that's been in an ice block that was put down there years ago by Wolverine. Omega Red gets released, and he's like, and they... and gets into a fight with Colossus. Colossus knows that Wolverine's the only one that's ever put him down, so tries to recruit Wolverine. When he tries to recruit Wolverine, he's not there, but Jubilee signs up for the job. I'm an X-Men. I can go fight. No, you can't. No. Uh-huh. And then Wolverine sees the note, but Jubilee is smart enough to leave a note, so she leaves a note. Wolverine reads the note, takes it wraps it up, tosses it to the side, and then leaves to Russia to go fight Omega Red. And then later Storm and Rogue show up. They're like, how did you show up? Well, if Wolverine would just start leaving a mess all the time, we would have found that note way earlier. Also, if you're wondering how much difference this is, when Kitty Pryde was told, hey, you should stay behind, she went off and joined up with the X-Men and traveled. When Jubilee was told in the first episode, hey, you should stay behind, you know what she did? She stayed behind.
Smarter than the average bear.
Mm-hmm. So, with that, and they're just different things of making sure that they're exploring, their bigger focus was on telling the storyline of the X-Men versus just putting the characters in there, because that's what's happened in the comics. Like, if you are a big X-Men fan, go ahead and try to explain Psylocke to me, because Psylocke's backstory is 4 bodies down in the 90s. And there's other characters on that are out there. And then sometimes you got Mojo. Mojo's a thing. And Mojo World. That being said, there's different things and aspects of the X-Men, the anime series that we see nowadays. One of my favorite things that are out there right now is the same actress who voice acted Rogue back in the day is still voice acting Rogue now in X-Men 97, and is still playing Rogue in Marvel Rivals. That's the version of Rogue that's in there, is the one from the X-Men the animated series.
Fun fact, the original voice of Jubilee from there, she doesn't reprise her role for the entirety of 97, but she does play a variant in the show.
Yep. There's also Capcom has a lot to deal with this, because Capcom makes X-Men Children of the Atom. All the characters on that are based on the animated series, and they have their voice actors to reprise their roles for that video game, which also gives you Capcom versus... then you also get Marvel Superheroes, then after that you get Capcom.
It ultimately led to Marvel vs. Capcom.
Yeah. But yeah, that's about all I've got so far for this episode. Any other takeaways that you want for X-Men the animated series?
No, I think covered all grounds.
All right.
Yeah, I got nothing.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it does a lot, and it's going to be it should be put into the pantheon of animated series that kind of changed the game and such, just like we did with Batman the animated series, Astro Boy, and various others, and probably The Simpsons, for what they do and what storylines they tell and how everything's going with that. That being said, our next episode is going to be available on February 20th. Until then, this is Gaming Theater Podcast signing off. Bye, everybody.
See ya.
Ciao. Bye, everyone.
Gaming Theater Podcast is hosted, created, produced, and edited by Leo Garcia, the Geek Scorpio.
But this one was edited by Brandon, the Tomato Man.
Our music is A Drinking Game. Stock media provided by Stormwave Audio /Pond5. Our cover art is by Adam Parker. You can find him at ParkerGFX on Twitter. If you want to send us some money to help with these episodes, you can do so at patreon.com/gamingtheaterpresents. Want to send support that doesn't hit your wallet? Please leave a review with wherever you hear your podcasts and share our podcast with your friends. It really helps out. Thank you for listening.